Hello, everybody, and welcome into this week's 30 Minutes program. And I'm really pleased to have one of our former employees who used to be working here at the radio station many years ago, but now she's flying all over the world. It is Alicia Pinto. And Alicia, first off, I am thrilled to be able to bring you into this studio today because you're not having to fly tomorrow, taking a next trip, but to know that you finished your education here at the University of Tennessee at Martin and then took a big, bold step to become an airline flight attendant. Wow. Tell me what sent you to fly over the world.
Well, originally I was going to be an actress because while I was working here at the radio station during my college years, I was also doing theater at Vanguard Theater. And after I graduated, I was just in that lull in between college and finding my first job. And somebody suggested, actually it was Betty Hudson, for those of you that remember Betty and Harry Hudson, she suggested that I be a flight attendant. And I thought, sure, why not? So in those days you had to mail off your a letter asking for a form to fill out, and then if you were selected, you got sent to Miami or one of the other cities where they were holding interviews. And so I went to one for Eastern Airlines, and here I am. 40 years later.
And being a flight attendant, you've had an opportunity to do a lot of things, but I want to start from the beginning. So your mom and dad both have been very well respected at the University of Tennessee at Martin. Your dad, great guy, passed away, and your mom still makes contributions. Tell me about your folks.
Well, they came here in 1964 with a whole bunch of an influx of professors, and their kids all became my best friends, and actually we still hang out to this day, many moons later. But they came here with 2 dogs, 2 cats, a flying squirrel, and several other things, and bought a farm on the north side of town. And my brother and I were born there. And through the years, Daddy's interest changed, and we started raising waterfowl. And when he passed away back in 2011, we had over 600 head of waterfowl. We had ducks and geese, and we had the most complete collection of geese in North America. And people would come and tour the farm, and we would mail birds all over the country. And it was just a lot of fun. I mean, it was a great way to grow up. Of course, we didn't really appreciate it at the time because he would have us out there in the hottest of hottest days and coldest of coldest days, putting up fences or doing whatever that needed to be done.
Your dad played what role at the university?
As at the end, I'm hoping I get this correct, he was head of elementary and or secondary education. I apologize, Daddy, for not remembering that after all these years. But he was head of the department. He was a trustee for a couple of years, or however long that term goes. He retired back in 2002, I believe. And so he taught some online classes for a while after he retired. And actually, I have to say that toward the end of his life, when he was still teaching, he was in the ICU, and he would tell me what to post on Blackboard. And this was statistics, so I had no idea what I was doing. And the students would call me and ask me questions about what was on Blackboard, and I was like, I don't know. But that was the kind of dad that my dad was. He was making sure that his student.
And your mom, who's going to be listening right now, her role in the university.
She's been at least one of the officers of Faculty Women's Club forever. Back in the days of registration, she would work in the administration building during the quarterly registration. And she's currently part of the community string orchestra that plays. They practice every Monday night. They started last week, I believe. And she's very involved in the Philharmonic Music Guild and church and several other little off things. She worked for We Care for many years.
By the way, what happened to all the geese?
We sold them. She decided, I believe, it's been 9 years ago this November, that it was just too much to take care of. So there was always somebody that wanted whatever it was she was trying to find a home for, be it the 13 donkeys, the goats, the geese, the farm equipment, whatever.
As much as you didn't like to go out there in the hot and the cold, you're out in the hot and the cold taking care of some little young people.
Oh.
They're not really people, okay, folks, but they're cats.
Yes, I'm the crazy cat lady of Martin now. I'm currently bottle feeding 4 kittens that I just got. And so I am working on a nonprofit that I'm going to make sure I finish the next couple of weeks. And so hopefully we can get some word out. I've got lots of cats that need homes. So if you're looking for a cat, please contact me.
Okay.
I'm on Facebook.
Okay. Alicia Pinto, right?
Correct.
So let me take this to the next step. So you were working here at the radio station part-time after graduating from Westview High School, and then you were working with, I'm thinking it's Kayla Carroll, is that correct?
Correct.
You folks,
And Amanda McCluskey.
And Amanda and some
their
others.
maiden names. Yeah, we were under Bill Snyder at Vanguard Theater, and we did lots of productions. I'd be here on the weekends, Saturday and Sunday night, and I traded out with David Bell. And after a while, it kind of became the David Show because I was just getting so busy with the theater. But we had a lot of fun, and working both radio stations, that made it interesting.
So you ended up graduating from UT Martin in what year?
I graduated in 87 with a major in communications and a minor in theater.
And from that step, did you know where you were going to go?
I had no idea. I mean, like I said, I was going to go to L.A. and be an actress, just because. And then when somebody suggested this flight attendant profession, I mean, that was really where I needed to be. That is so me, and I'm having such a great time doing it. And so the first thing I did was go to Newark, New Jersey. Well, after a month's training in Miami, my first.
Well, you got accepted. Now you got accepted.
I got accepted
right out of college.
Well, I graduated in May, and I started in October. Mm-hmm. So actually, I interviewed with Delta Airlines and with United Airlines. Eastern Airlines. Mm-hmm. And so Eastern hired me. Mm-hmm. And so it was.
Well, what goes on to become a flight attendant?
Well, it's changed.
By the way, it used to be called stewardesses and steward. Is that right?
Right. And that's just a mouthful. And so now that there's all of us are both sexes, it's just easier to say flight attendant. So it's a cattle call initially. Nowadays, it's completely changed. Everything is over the internet, and you do video calls or whatever. But it was a cattle call in Miami, and they take you off and they do group interviews and then one-on-one interviews, and then you go through medical, and then the next thing you know, you're hired. And then you go through Eastern was 4 weeks of training down in Miami, and during that training, you're doing a little bit of service, but most of it's safety, learning the safety equipment of the aircraft, learning about the aircraft, learning how to get out of the aircraft. And in those days, it was all about your lips and your tips. You had to make sure that your makeup was correct and your hair was correct. And, of course, we got weighed. Actually, in that training, we got weighed every week. And so if you were close to your max weight, you were having some hard days and very light meals. So it was interesting. It was different.
Was there a moment when you thought, I don't think I want to be in the sky?
There hasn't been. I mean,
even starting out early?
Yes. Let me tell you about that, because the very first time I was on an airplane, I was Anchor Club president, and I went to Valley Forge for this yearly event they had.
What is Anchor Club?
It's a service organization for high school.
Okay.
It's sponsored by the Pilot Club.
Okay.
And
Pilot Club, no pun intended.
Very good. Very good. Good catch. So, and I was on the airplane going into Philadelphia, and suddenly started circling, and I had no idea what was going on. It was the first time I'd flown, and the girl sitting next to me was, going, "It's okay. This is what's happening." And I was more or less green. And so at that point, I couldn't imagine flying. And then I took another trip to New York with some friends. And then when I got this job, I wrote to the girl that was with me on that first flight, and I said, "You're not going to believe what I'm doing for a living after being so green and so scared. And now I'm working on an airplane." And here I am, almost 40 years later. I'll start my 38th year in October.
That's a long time to be in the air.
It is.
I know this is a broad question, and you're not going to have a good answer for it, I bet, but how many miles have you flown, do you think?
It used to be, when I was flying domestic, it was about 350,000 a year. But as the years have changed, I'm doing international. That's probably about 7,000-ish a week, and that's just what I'm flying. But of course, I have to get to work, so that's another 1,000 or so.
10, 15 million miles you've been in the air,
probably
at least.
Probably.
So getting into flight attendant and starting, what kind of training were you given? Now that you got the cattle call, and then they said, "Hey, we like you." So what happened after that?
Well, it seemed like the very first thing we had to do was learn airport codes, because each airport has its own code. Like Nashville is BNA for Briley Nashville. Chicago is ORD for Orchard Field. And some of them are really weird, and I can't come up with one right now. But anyway, so we had to learn that. We had to learn how to operate all the equipment on the aircraft.
What does that mean, the equipment?
In those days, it was a lot simpler. It was just halon extinguishers, water extinguishers, and oxygen bottles. and then there was the crash acts. So that was pretty much it. Nowadays, we've got AEDs, we've got medical kits. Oh, we did have the first aid kits, but so we've got a little more specific equipment that we can use, especially in a medical emergency. And we have PBEs, things that we can put over our heads so that we have oxygen and can fight fires, and so all kinds of stuff.
If you just joined us, we have Alicia Pinto. She is a flight attendant with United. She's been flying for 38 years. And what have you learned in that 38 years about being a flight attendant?
Well,
about people. I'm sorry.
About people, definitely. Somebody once told me, well, actually, this one person made a negative remark about a group of people, and that really stuck with me. And I've had to work hard at making sure when I meet a new group of people culturally, now that I'm flying around the world, that I don't let stereotypes come into my head, that I just meet each group of people as they are, and I learn about them. And that has been the coolest thing about the whole thing is learning. Well, especially I just in the last couple of years, I've started going to Israel, which is such a hard topic right now. But getting to learn about the Jewish population, because that was not something that I grew up with, and so that's been very interesting.
Have you flown into Tel Aviv?
I have. Usually in July, that's my trip. So yeah. I've been there 8 or 10 times. And then I did do a trip with the church where we were there for 10 days.
By the way, did that strengthen your relationship with Christ?
Oh, definitely. To
be able to see where Jesus walked and crucified.
Oh, gosh. I mean, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. And that was the cool thing, too, knowing, people save up their entire life to make the trip to the Holy Land. And to know that I can go every week if I wanted to, obviously not right now. But, how cool is that? And the other part of it is just with any of the countries. We laugh because I've gotten all of my neighbors addicted to salted butter. And so I have to go to Europe to get salted butter, or I need coffee from Brazil.
Have you learned to speak a little Hebrew?
I was working on it. I've forgotten it right now, but I was working on it.
So in a bigger picture here, most people are asking, how safe is it to fly? And all of this, I think, probably is because of 9/11.
Right.
Where were you?
I was actually here, and you and I talked shortly after that. I can remember pacing around my house as we were talking after 9/11, but actually I was here in Martin. I've managed to miss all of the major things that have happened in the airline industry and actually in the world. I was here with my son. My ex-husband had actually asked for a divorce that day, and I've thanked him very much for asking for a divorce. So I'd come home to be with my parents. The person that did take my trip, I was stuck in Denver for 5 days. So had I flown, I was supposed to fly the 11th and 12th, and had I flown, I'd been stuck in Denver trying to get home. So I'm very blessed to have been able to be here.
What was your reaction to all of that?
Oh, it was terrifying. Actually, I'm going to get choked up just thinking about it. Because I sort of knew some people that were involved. Nobody was a good friend, but I had run into people in my in our crew room. One of the captains his wife was I was based in Philadelphia in those days, and so his wife was a Philadelphia flight attendant. So, different things that have happened over the years. Our crash in Sioux City back in 89, you know people that have been involved in these horrible situations, and so it does make it real. Makes it very real.
You've lost colleagues.
I've lost colleagues, yeah.
Let's go off of a little spin here for just a moment. What does a flight attendant do? What is the responsibility of taking care of 350 people on an airplane, and how many does it take to take care of 350 on an airplane?
Well, according to the FAA, you have to have one flight attendant for every 50 passengers that the airplane holds. And then we go above and beyond that. So you hope to have a flight attendant at every door. Sometimes that doesn't happen. A flight attendant has to cover 2 doors. And when I say that, in an emergency, we would have to open those doors to get you out. Now, if you're on an airplane, the first thing you'll hear after all the announcements and the doors shut is flight attendants arm your doors for departure. And we have to flip a switch or have a maneuver that we do that engages the slide so that if we have an emergency, when we open the door, the slide will inflate. So that's the first thing. And then when we come to the gate, you'll hear them say, flight attendants prepare for arrival, disarm and cross-check. So then we're disengaging it so that when they open the doors, nobody gets hurt. So that's really our main job, is to make sure that those doors are armed and disarmed. We're also there for medical situations. We're there, just to make sure that you mind the rules. And while we're at it, because we have nothing better to do and you might get a little hungry, we're going to feed you and give you something to drink. But really our main reason for being there is to get you off that airplane and keep you occupied.
I don't normally dig this far down, but have you had to put somebody off the plane yet?
I have. During the mask mandates. It was two families the same day going in and out of Orlando, Florida. But they had 2-year-olds that wouldn't wear their masks. And, if you were in those days, if you had a 2-year-old that you knew was going to be on an airplane, you needed to work on wearing a mask before they got on the airplane, because now they're in this crazy, strange place and you're trying to put something over their face. So it was really sad to have to do that. And we worked with them. We tried really, really hard to make it work. But, we just had to go with the rules.
Many people get on a plane. Some, I shouldn't say many, I don't know. But they've had some alcohol before they've gotten on the plane, and then they get more alcohol, and then they get in trouble, or sometimes get in trouble, or they just go to sleep, one or the other.
They do. I mean, we've had a few people over the years, nobody that's ever been these crazy stories. However, recently, we had somebody take Ambien and then have alcohol, and they passed out, and we weren't sure whether they were alive or not. And so, thankfully, we had 4 doctors on board, and they got her awake enough to know that she had taken Ambien. And so do not take Ambien and alcohol on an airplane, please. It required lots of reports from us. And then later, when she finally woke up, one of the flight attendants told her what had happened. She's like, oh, darn, I hate that I missed it. And we're like, well, please, don't do it again. So that's really, most of the time, it's been medication and alcohol mix that have been the problems on board.
If you've just joined us, we have Alicia Pinto. We're talking about her world of being an airline attendant and flight attendant, and you've done a lot of things. Has there been a water landing in your world?
Nope, only in training.
Tell me about the training.
Well, different airlines do different things. My Eastern training was different from my United training. At Eastern, we actually slid off the wing of a DC-9, and so that was kind of cool. We all have to go down the chutes just to know that feeling. And I would really like to not have to do that. I do recommend wearing pants on an airplane, because if you have to go down the chute, the dress is not going to be real fun. Again, we do work with the equipment, and then we do service. We practice serving you in the cabin.
Have you noticed how people dress nowadays on a plane trip?
Yeah. Well, now, when I first started as a standby, you had to wear a shirt and a tie. We had to wear hose and a dress. And then we started standing out because everybody else was dressed so shabbily.
Yeah. But everybody else that's now on a plane looks like, they
just woke up.
They just woke up and put on tennis shoes, and sometimes there's a lot of things that are exposed. We'll use it at that. So, but.
Yeah, no, it's definitely gotten bad. That's why I point out, that when we were dressing up, we stood out so much as standbys. But because back in the day, everybody dressed up, and so now if somebody's got a suit and a tie, I really compliment them because they look so nice. I haven't had anybody just terribly awful lately.
You have flown with Margaret Thatcher, is that right? Is that what you told me one time?
I have. No, not Margaret Thatcher. Madeleine Albright 3 times.
Sorry.
Yeah,
I missed that.
No worries. Madeleine Albright 3 times. President Ford. My favorite was Eddie Van Halen and Valerie Bertinelli. We played peekaboo with Wolfie, their son, who was about 2 at the time. So there's been a couple of celebrities, not anybody recently, just because my roots don't encourage that.
Yeah. So do you treat them any better? Or are they first class, or,
Usually they're first class. Actually, one of the coolest things that I had happen, I had Annette Funicello and Richard Pryor on the same airplane. Howie Mandel was actually there, but he was really quiet. And Richard Pryor he was funny, and there were some quirky things that happened. But at the end of the flight, he and Annette Funicello were both waiting to get off the aircraft because they moved a little bit slower because they both had MS. And watching them meet each other for the first time was such a cool thing, just because they're real people like the rest of us, but it was very sweet.
You have come to meet hundreds of thousands of people. Is there someone on the plane that you happened to, connected with and just might have been a priest, or it might have been a politician, or because all of those people have to fly?
They do. Actually, I met my husband on the aircraft, but that's a whole nother story. There's several people that are just so kind. I met somebody, and we started talking about napkins, and they made napkins and sent me some napkins. Actually, I met a young lady when she was 12 on her school trip, and she and I have been pen pals ever since, and she's now in her 40s. So, yeah, there have been some special people that I've connected with.
I didn't want to dig too deep here on this next question, but I thought it would be kind of a helpful understanding of when they talk about planes being shut down or the airline not able to move because you're dealing with contracts. Tell me what is going on with American today, best you can.
Well, all of us are in contract disputes. American, Southwest, United. I believe Southwest has signed a contract, but it's just really tough. People don't understand that it takes us 4 or 5 years to get contracts. And I know other people may not be pro-union or think a union's important, but unions are very important, and that's what protects our jobs. And so for whatever the reason, it always takes us forever to get a contract. And so we've been at it. Our contract expired in 21. And so we recently took a strike vote, a chaos strike. Now, this isn't like we're going to stop the airline kind of strike. This is where we would have permission from the mediation board to just pick a flight and strike that flight, or pick a day and strike that day or something. And we don't want to take it out on the passengers because the passengers do support us, but we have to do something to get the company's attention. So we've had little informational strikes through this last year, and actually one day it was every airline that was in contract negotiations got together. So you had Frontier, I believe Alaska, Southwest, American, United. It was very cool for all of us to come together. So it's tough. Now, in the past, when I was with Eastern, the airline actually was shut down because of a mechanic strike, but that was a totally different time, and the owner of our airline was, at the time, probably one of the most hated people in the country. But we all stick together, and that's what it takes is sticking together. And it's not that we're asking for the world by any stretch. We've got reserve flight attendants that can barely eat. They're struggling to pay the rent. Actually, some live in their car. So this is a great job, but the first years are very lean, and it's tough, and we need to make sure that they're taken care of. So we're not asking for the world. I'm
just curious. People, they're asking, they want me to ask this question. I know it's coming. You do too. What does a flight attendant get paid? A junior starting into it.
I don't know exactly what it is. I think when I first started, it was $13 an hour. And again, you've got to realize too, as we get up into the more senior times, it's $60 an hour, and that sounds like a ridiculous amount of money. However, we're only paid when we're in the air. That whole time during boarding, that's probably the roughest part of the entire flight, we're not paid for that. We don't get paid until we push back from the gate, and then we stop getting paid once we get to the gate. So that hourly rate covers all the times that we're not on an airplane, because domestically you can maybe fly for 3 hours, sit for 3 hours, fly for 2 hours, sit for another 3 hours. So the whole day you're only flying 5 hours, but you've been at it for 12. So that's why it looks a little weird if you just look at our hourly rates.
Mm-hmm. I'm kind of curious. Do you want to fly at night, or do you want to fly during the day?
Well, since I fly internationally, most of my stuff flies during the night. So we leave at like 4 or 5 o'clock, 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening off the East Coast. And then when we land, it's 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning in Europe. And then coming back, like this last trip, I'm doing Rome this month, and I got up at 10 till midnight, my time, which was 10 till 7 there. And so it's a little weird. And luckily I'm a person that I'm just awake whenever I'm awake.
You wear 2 watches,
I do.
home time, and then you have the time of the flight and so forth.
I do.
But you leave Martin and you go to Nashville.
I do.
And then
I fly to D.C. to start my trip. So, yeah, my commute is a little weird.
What about your parking? I mean, you go and you park like everybody else?
I do. I have a wonderful parking lot. I mean, we have an employee lot, but I won't go into that. So I park at, I'm going to give them a little shout out at Flyaway Parking on Murfreesboro Avenue in Nashville, because they take really good care of me. I feel like Norm at Cheers when I come into the parking lot. It's, hi, Alicia.
So you don't get paid to travel from Martin to Nashville.
I don't get paid to get, I don't get paid till I get to D.C. So once I get to Nashville, I still have to get to D.C. And so I have a crash pad that I keep in D.C. for the nights that I don't make it home and I need a place to stay. So, yeah, everything like that is on me.
What would you want, if you can say to any passenger, anyone who's going to fly, what is your best or maybe your favorite message to anyone who gets on a plane for, say, the first time?
Well, pay attention to the flight attendants. Pay attention to the safety demonstration, because that really is important. And even if you don't want to pay attention, don't be talking. That is one of the problems that I've had recently, is people on the airplane talk so loud during the safety demo that nobody can hear. And it's rude to begin with, but you may be causing somebody to not be able to get out of that aircraft because they couldn't hear, or they don't speak English, so they're trying to figure out what's going on, and you're distracting them. So that would be my biggest thing. Well, and just treat the people around you the way that you would want to be treated, and respect the people around you, the flight attendants and your fellow traveling public. Don't be obnoxious.
What's the best seat?
I always like the back row, but that's just me. However, if you sit in the back of the airplane, some of them fishtail, so you may get a little bit green. The safest place is probably over the wings, and I like a window.
There's a little more room right there.
There is, because it's the emergency exit. Well, on most airplanes, there's some airplanes that don't have a window exit. But
relationships with, every time you get on a plane, you have perhaps some new pilots or different pilots or the old pilots. Which one is it?
Half the time I don't even see the pilots because I'm at the back of the aircraft. My favorite position is the aft galley, so I'm back there, and they come on much later than we do, so I may not even see them. If we don't lay over at the same hotel, I could go a complete round trip and never see them.
And you do have sleeping quarters when you're
We do
traveling.
have sleeping quarters. Yeah.
Where are they?
Some of them, we just have chairs in the back of the aircraft, but on the 787, we have a bunk room upstairs at the tail of the aircraft. And then on the 777, we have either lower deck in the cargo area, or an upper deck, which is in the ceiling compartments.
Best recommendation, the first person who gets on that very first time, is there something that you need to tell them or would like for them to know about flying?
Well,
buckle your seatbelt.
Yes,
and leave
please.
it on there all the time.
Leave it on there all the time, because I spend all night long when the seatbelt time comes on going around going, wake up, put your seatbelt on, wake up, put your seatbelt on. So yeah, you need to keep it on all the time. I don't want to scare anybody, but turbulence is out there. I just don't ever have a flight where there's no turbulence. Most of the time it's just a little, bump in the road.
Alicia, I'm so grateful that we had this opportunity to talk with you and to help maybe people to understand what it's like to fly. And is there anybody else flying from this community here that you know of?
Oh, there's several of us now. I used to be in an oddity, but there are actually several flight attendants. And don't ask me to call names because I'll never come up with them. Yeah. But I know of 2 other flight attendants and a couple of pilots.
That are from right around here.
They're from Martin.
Yes.
And they commute just like I do.
Hope you've enjoyed our program, everybody. Alicia Pinto, our guest. She's a flight attendant with United Airlines, has been flying for 38 years. And you want her to come speak to maybe your civic club sometime, and she'd be glad to, if she's not in Rome. So thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
That's our program on 30 Minutes here on WCMT. Paul Tinkle, pre-recorded here on this week's 30 Minutes program.
You've been listening to 30 Minutes, a community affairs program on Thunderbolt Radio. You can listen to this broadcast and others anytime by visiting thunderboltradio.com and following the Thunderbolt Radio and Digital YouTube page. Thanks for listening.